is Glenn Hauser with World of Radio 2300. Outlook. Standard disclaimer. We now have some details about the special mid-winter broadcast transmitted with the BBC World Service for staff of the British Antarctic Survey looking at bases there. There was some confusing information as the week went on, but as usual there was a test 1 week earlier at exactly 21:30 UT on Saturday, June 14th. And the official broadcast is Saturday, June 21st at 21:30 on 5960 via UAE, 9575 via Ascension, 12065 and 13810 via Wolverton, UK. According to people at the Moreland site, via Alan Pennington in the British JS Club. Confusion arose because the BBC World Service website for that particular program, Sunday, June 21st, at 1832 UT, but apparently that's only on streaming and DAB in the UK and no shortwave frequencies at that earlier time. In DX Magazine of the Worldwide DX Club, this was Newland in South Australia due first. Radio station 4KZ in Queensland was sold earlier this year and purchased by a networker, same programming in different cities. Consequently, the HF side of the broadcast was shut down. RKZ formerly operated on 531 AM, 1611 AM, and 5055, as well as FM frequencies. The Mike Cooper BBC Monitoring has an extensive report about the team of Belarus state radio projects for Poland. The article was originally published on the Belarusian investigative website Blue Wall, entitled How Much Belarusian Propaganda for Poland Costs and Who Makes It. It was reposted on the pro-opposition Belarusian website, Nasha Nila, on the 10th of June. It says in 2024, the International Radio Belarus, part of the program media holding company Bell Teleradio, started broadcasting in Polish. It launched a multimedia news and analysis project, A Word of Freedom for Both, a 6-hour broadcast telling Poles how great it is to live in Belarus under Alexander Lukashenko. It goes into more detail, but does not make clear that Belarus had previously been broadcasting in Polish. Alexander Lukashenko of Ukraine says this started in 2006. The Navy dude in Saudi Arabia says I remember their final broadcast in 2016, and they returned to shortwave. Richard Wagner says they remained on shortwave until 2022 via the German low-power shortwave service from Krinkel. Since then, online and satellite only. The final shortwave broadcast using their old transmitter was in the shortwave archive on 31 March 2016, says Richard Wagner. And while so many have said, I remember listening to several of their frequencies, low-powered, maybe 5 kilowatts, presumably X-jamming transmitters. They were often heard relatively well into the west coast of Canada over the poles. The non-residence broadcasts from RNA are in Brazil, scheduled for 150 UT Tuesday through Saturday, continue to be sporadic depending on Senegalese coverage. These are originally publicized as in English and Spanish, 5 minutes of each. Lately, there have been some other language we do not recognize, presumably a native language from the Amazon region, such as on June 19th at 0150, I was listening via Bonaire. Something originally in Portuguese is being voiced over in this unknown language. And John Fayozzi notes the same. Via remote in Brazil, Zaharia in Greece, new or reactivated Brazilian on 9530.03, June 12th, at 15:03 and 15:25. It seems to be called right down, as in Radio God. And also, there were chime tones at 15:55. Ron Hart points out that Super Radio Deus é Amor, Super Radio God is Love, used to be on the air on 9530 from Curitiba, Paraná, so maybe it's been reactivated. Their AM frequency is 1210. This was the service which had the preacher mixing Spanish and Portuguese called Portugal, David Miranda, a Pentecostal church, when he died in 2015. Zach listened again on the 14th of June at 07:20. But he found they had moved to 9520. And they'll sign off at 1917. He says it's very possible this shortwave connects to various audio sources relaying various programs. As for the Overcomer Ministry, Brother Scare, or TONBS, quitting shortwave at the end of June, what effect would this have on Spaceline Bulgaria, which has been carrying his programming? Alexander Ryatnikov says they air 15 hours back per day, 1 hour rest on Fridays, and just 2 hours and 45 minutes from other customers on a daily basis, plus 20 to 60 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So this will be a serious hit. Takahiko Akabayashi in Japan tells us about China. Reports from listeners in China, a medium wave DRM test broadcast was conducted in Zhengzhou, Henan province, on 1377 kHz, June 11th at 13 to 13:39 UT. Until now, medium wave DRM test transmissions had been only on 1557 from several stations, and to Jam Radio Taiwan International with 300 kilowatts on 1557. This may be on 1377, the first medium wave DRM experimental broadcast in China for its original purpose rather than jamming. 1377 is a 600 kilowatt transmitter normally broadcasting CNI1 program Voice of China. Filed under East Turkestan, via Ron Howard, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, published an extensive article dated May 27. Xinjiang police records detail a years-long Chinese government push to silence the news outlet, which the Trump administration has dismantled. Of course, referring to Radio Free Asia's Wicker service. Visit www.icij.org. Me and Mike Burcliffe, an update about Arctic Radio in Finland. A new transmitter gifted to the station has arrived. It is formerly used as a non-directional beacon. The first transmitter that will start the station on 252 kHz is a Nautel ND2000 running 500 watts. The earlier test transmitter broadcast is too unreliable, so this will become the backup transmitter that will be in use if the main 1 kilowatt transmitter fails. Germany, Uncle Bill Tobert says, due to poor weather on Sunday, June 15th, there will be one more repeat broadcast of From the Isle of Music, Saturday, June 21st, on 9670, channel 292, at 17 UT, with a booster beam aimed east. From WWDXC, Thomas Becker, Jake FM, celebrates its 7th anniversary. The broadcast will be on Sunday, 22 June, at 12:13 UT on 9670, and the lecture is on Friday on 6070. To further repeat the following Saturday, 28 June at 0810 on 6070. Zaharis Younger says the National Council for Radio and Television in Greece has sent letters to around 100 Greek video creators on YouTube, urging them to register mandatorily in the Registry of Audiovisual Media Service Providers, citing a law designating these creators as providers of media communication services. All are required to comply by the end of this month. What in the world is the NCR-TV pulling down? There was a law passed 3 years ago granting it authority to intervene also in internet media when deemed necessary. Fines have already been imposed for songs deemed offensive to human dignity. Tuning goes by a trap singer. Oklahoma, Silomar State Beach, California, using his 100-foot roll wire. Ron Howard has again been monitoring RRI Navigator Program 1 Indonesia. Direct 7289.93. First nice clear reception on June 19th between 0825 and 1000, including easy listening to songs and some Islamic influenced music and singing. And, of course, a call to prayer at a certain time. Also, June 14th from 0758 until off at 0915. He says, I still check for the former frequency 6125 after 7289.93 goes off the air, but it is never heard there now. Also, on June 12th from 0805 until off at 0908, it was an anomaly, announcing with one long phone conversation until the Islamic segment at 0859. Iran, we all saw IRIB TV studio getting bombed by Israel and a news person fleeing. This led to some apparently exaggerated assumptions about Iran's entire broadcasting. Several surveys show many medium-wave frequencies are still on the air as usual. And what about the shortwave in English? There are 2 hours scheduled at 1920, which has been heard on 11740, but barely modulated. And the other one is at 1520 UT, 11640 or 645 or 11710. Often I monitored via a bike remote. So the signals on 11645 and those from North Korea, not Iran. Iran's going through this early evening by the interest. It's scheduled at 116 to 1220 UT on a frequency. Posting visual sends 15430. June 17th, a powerhouse signal but low modulation level. Andrew Braid says the music heard on most but not all of the medium wave transmitters at 2030 UT is a military march, not the same as the Iranian national anthem. American Western in Denmark, in the briefs to the club says, I asked the close friend in Iran about the military music. Her answer is it is an anthem composed right after the Islamic Revolution, radio and television. Truck boss in France says, I heard a station in the Hebrew on 6,000 kilohertz USB at 20 UT, a very good signal over Central France. Listening to his recording, Dave Kenny says, I hear an ID for Galgalatz, and then called Israel Jerusalem. Galgalatz is an FM station in Tel Aviv. Chris Greenway says, sounds like a reactivation of IDF radio Galei Tzahal. On shortwave, Galgalatz is a sister station to Galei Tzahal. But Tom Kemp, DF4JL, replies, Galgalatz is very famous in Israel, receives extremely high ratings, especially among younger audiences on FM 91.8. It is not comparable to Galei Tzahal, used by the IDF. Bonnie Rosenstrike tells us that Colin English, that's the Goldman station, has added an extra news bulletin at 09 UT. Live on FM 101.3, 100.3, and the REKA live stream via kan.org.il. Some reports of the NHK interval signal of 9440, running over and over. Joe Hammond in New Jersey was hearing it via remote in the Netherlands. June 14th at 0958. Presumably relayed via France, still going at 1024 UT. Now stitching for a new broadcast for the Middle East. On June 15th, Joe was hearing a Japanese program from 9440 from 0800. And back to the interval signal after 1000. Stephen C. Wood says the continual interval signal in 90s in Japanese and English. We're on air at 131 UT, June 16th, presumably via France. Via international vacuum, undersea cable, AM, FM, and shortwave. Mobile radio 2300. Our thanks this week for generous financial support from Gerald Keith Hubbard in North Carolina after the summer solstice. We send a check on the U.S. Bank to Glen Houser, P.O. Box 1684, ENID, OK, 73702. Emails contributed via PayPal, not necessarily in response to WORADIO. One heard reports on 7340 West Community Radio from Taiwan to North Korea with 1 minute, Monday, June 16th at 12:40, with a weekday quotation in English. Life is always to be spent, not to be saved, from B.H. Bonds. Shokade or Sea Breeze JSR from Japan for North Korea about abductions had been on a single frequency of 13 UT 5965, according to Hiroshi. Still don't have the frequency for the repeat at 1555, but presumably still an English hour only on Wednesdays. On June 18th, after the initial level of the radio war between Turkey and Kurdistan, just about 11 megahertz, the frequencies kept shifting around. The 555 airwaves jammer of music was 8 hertz above 11530, while Negev and Kurdish, presumably via Armenia, was 2 hertz below 11550. But a few hours later at 0745, both frequencies had changed, and they were actually on almost the same frequency, 11510, plus or minus 4 or 10 hertz. Okay, 0930, they were 10 kilohertz apart again. 11540.012 from Jammer and 11549.998 for Negev. Then just came this reports. Radio Kuwait still has apparently only one shortwave broadcast active, and it is in Persian, or Farsi, measured on 7249.850. Okay, going in 10 UT daily. But it starts with the Holy Quran at 0803. Patrick Fadashevsky in Wrocław, Poland, tells me on June 18th, BBC was heard via Lithuania, 1386 kilohertz around 20 UT. Other transfers from old frequency Greek pirate playing live music. It would be nice if they would go somewhere else. I guess BBC was in English, but he says programs may be in Russian in the future on this frequency. Here, my Cooper story dated the 10th of June from publicmediaalliance.org. KDVB, Democratic Voice of Women, reached audiences in earthquake at Myanmar dated 10 June. And they said shortwave is the best way to reach people inside Burma. Many regions in Burma do not have internet and electricity. Shortwave is the only medium that could reach a wider audience in the country. North America, the power of Mixed Radio International, reported inside the 49-meter band. Eric Fenner's Wolf in Washington State says 6085 USD. Then at 45 UT, June 19th, a huge signal from the U.S. East Coast, listening to a remote in Maryland. The usual mix of music, smooth jazz. This pirate to satisfy instant reach is most likely to be found inside the broadcast bands. Student Seward in Massachusetts agrees. Huge signal here in Massachusetts. Local canned IDs and smooth jazz at midnight 55. And John Trios replies, "Oh, you are kidding. Has he taken over the 500 kilowatt transmitter in Maine? It's this line over here in upstate New York, the best signal on the band by far." Like Country in Arizona reports on 15170, June 16th at 0250 until off at 0330, apparently in Russian. What could it be? Also, as a test, I tried an HFCC, a registration for Petropavlovsk Kamchatsky on 15170 between 02 and 06 UT with 250 kilowatts. I don't think it's been active before then. From rkn.gov.ru via RusTX, on June 9th, the license for broadcasting on 738 kilohertz from the World Radio Network was revoked by a court decision. The licensee was Freedom Technologies Foundation. That, I believe, was near Moscow. South Carolina and more about the Overcomer Ministry ceasing shortwave broadcasts. According to Jeff White on Red Staff, they will stop radio broadcasting on AM, FM, and shortwave at the end of June. This can no longer be sustained as contributions have been dropping. They say it will continue on internet and on a low-power FM under construction in Walterboro. However, GH, find no such construction permit or existing station at the FCC for that locality. And will, of course, open up a great many hours of available airtime on WRMI, WWCR, WTWW, WBCQ, WIAB, Channel 292, and Bulgaria, as well as some of USA AM stations. The measurements listed on their schedule over a year ago being WWDA 1170 and KXEL 1540, late at night. However, like Miracle says, the Power Ministry was already removed from Channel 292 Germany 3 years ago. In Mike Cooper, a Reuters story of June 16th. Togo has suspended broadcasts of Radio France International and France 24 for 3 months. Its communications authority says, accusing them of a lack of impartiality and rigor. Suspension comes as tensions are rising between the West African country's leader, Faure Gnassingbé, and the opposition. On the keepyourwave.co.uk, June 16th, Leah David Pope, BBFC. BBC suggests that the Radio 4 long-way service will not be shut down at the end of June, as had been feared. Whilst the radio tele-switching service, RDS, alongside Channel 198 long-wave, is being phased out over the summer, Radio 4 long-wave will continue to broadcast until an impact review is carried out. It had been assumed both services would end together on 30 June, as had been reported. The news is music to the ears of long-wave listeners and supporters, many of whom signed a 5,000-strong petition to keep the cash flow. It remains unclear how long the reprieve on Radio 4 long-wave will last, or whether BBC will shelve plans to axe this August amid mounting pressure to do so. Both Kane Nation was surprised to find the BBC World Service in English in the DRM mode on 11830, June 18th at 0610 and 0630. Apparently testing including the journaling data channel at 0633, which it turned out had news stories which were 2 years old, as Dave Kenny points out. Harry Trey reports as of June 13th, Coast Guard Station NMG in New Orleans has been off the air for several weeks. That is, no weather facts, voice transmissions, and nav text broadcasts. Troublesome for us who live along the Gulf Coast and depend on their daily weather broadcasts. He contacted USCG Communications Command and got a reply. It's been degraded since 18 April. We're still trying to fix the issue. That is nav text. HF broadcasts have been degraded since the 20th of May. We're working to resolve the issue. David Cole says the editor from the Wall Street Journal, June 15th. The art of a spectrum deal. At long last, Republicans have struck a deal to auction more government spectrum as part of the tax bill. Federal agencies have resisted relinquishing their spectrum, even when they aren't putting it to good use, and don't want private companies building in their spectrum backyards. The Defense Department claims private deployment in certain frequency bands will disrupt its systems, though the FCC disagrees. The deal would give FCC authority to auction 800 megahertz of spectrum through 2034, with 500 of that coming from government agencies within the 1.3 and 10.5 gigahertz bands, especially useful for mobile providers. Much has been made in the press as of June 13th that as a result of the Iran-Israel war, most of America is resuming its Farsi language broadcasts. However, there's nothing about shortwave in particular, and Radio Farda is actually the name of the U.S. service in the Persian language. If on shortwave, the obvious site to use for that would be Kuwait, but we have no info about that, and it's supposedly being turned down. Anyhow, according to the Washington Post, VOA told more than 50 employees to come back to work immediately amid escalating military action between Iran and Israel. Meanwhile, the vote over in Mike Cooper, U.S. House Oversight Committee, has launched an investigation into security and manual failures at the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Christina Reich, the letter directed to Carrie Lake, and it's signed by, among others, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the name James Comer. John Fidelsa says the fact that both Comer and Greene's signatures are on the letter raises my suspicions about their allegations immediately. Both are inveterate partisans, not unwilling to exaggerate or even make things up to suit their purposes. Meanwhile, the Greenville transmitters are still on standby because Glenn Swiderski, the former engineer there, who's keeping up with what's going on tells me as of June 14th. Lincoln Dale is still at the station. It appears the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing. They asked him what it would cost to run the rigs a couple of hours a week to keep them going. And now that the Jewish folks are blowing stuff up, I'm wondering what their thoughts are on shutting Kuwait down. In mass murders or cuffs, that is. I was driving along I-78 east about 10 miles east of the WMLK, a series of Yahweh transmitter, and came across a billboard with an arcane scripture and the following on www.wlc.org. That refers to the ministry behind the rotating antenna and 500 kilowatt transmitter of WBCQ. Perhaps we'll see these folks showing up elsewhere on the shortwave dial. Military replies, they have periodically struck a tone in other stations, probably partly because of the downtime history up in Monticello. I would not expect to see them snap up a lot of lower power stuff unless the 500 kilowatt acts up a lot in the future. That would be like drinking decaf after being strung out on espresso. If an entire station with at least 100 kilowatts would go on the block, who knows? Toronto forwards a story from CornCutterNews.com. Legendary radio host Dr. Demento announces retirement after 55 years. A bittersweet moment for the fans of modern music and radio history. Dr. Demento was really very handsome. The iconic host of his show, now at the age of 84. He announced that at the conclusion of what he said was the last on his regular shows. James Brennan, KG5JST, replies, the end of an era, hard to believe that Dr. Demento is retiring. He was a big part of my teenage years, which I credit with giving me much of my love of radio and the media. The reason was that my brother did not like the show, not attend news reports, that on the anniversary of his priestly ordination, Pope Leo XIV has traveled to the Vatican Radio Shortwave Transmission Center in a town of Santa Maria de Galicia in the Lazio region, expressing his gratitude for the work carried out with fidelity and continuity. Joe Hannon reminds us of a site looking for nearly 2,000 web receivers around the world. Not the one for Kiwis in particular. This one is www.rx-tx.info. The propagation envelope from SWPC issued June 16th. AMKNC is peaking at 25 and 5, June 26th. 15 and 4 on July 1st and 2nd, 5th and 6th. The United States of only 5 and 2 are June 19th to 22nd, 29th and 30th, July 4th and 10th. Solar flux descending from 140 on June 20th to 110 by July 2nd, back up to 160 by July 12th. For much more info, consult our website, worldoфradio.com. And many thanks to all our contributors and stations. Desiring you to hear me again next week. Glenn Hauser here, concluding World of Radio 2300. My standard disclaimer. With transmitters located in Germany, this is Shortwave Radio.
What do you do over the air? So you don't know just what it means. Just to shoot off, shake out your jeans. Get on your feet, jump to the beat of this is Shortwave Radio.
Thank you for spending some time on 3975 and 6160 AM. This is Shortwave Radio. You can contact us at either 3975 or 6160 at shortwaveradio.de. We do hope you enjoyed what you listened to. Please join us again tomorrow. Have a peaceful night. This is Shortwave Radio, signing off.